Principal Matters Podcast, episode 504. Hi, friends. It's Will Parker back with my co-host, Dr. Jen Schwanke, for another Principal Matters episode. Jen, this week, our guest is going to be Dr. Kip Glazer, who's just a wonderful administrator from the beautiful state of California and who's been a real pioneer in making sure that the use of technology and AI is student-driven, not just teacher or admin driven. So I'm so excited for you to hear this conversation. But before we do that, we always start with a question of the week. This is becoming a common theme, but this is based on some conversations I've been having lately. So the question I worded like this: I'm working hard, doing some good work, of course, not perfectly, but I'm beginning to feel stuck. How do I keep myself from becoming complacent as a leader? I know you feel that.
I do. I think this is totally normal. First of all, I think we should normalize the fact that we all ask ourselves this question at some point in our leadership journey. And I think the best leaders, the ones that will stay non-complacent, are the ones that ask themselves how to not get complacent. So this is great that our listener is asking this question.
Well, it's such a great place to visit because this can be interpreted in a lot of ways. Sometimes people interpret that as maybe I need to do something different. And that could be the case. Sometimes this can be interpreted as maybe I need to rediscover the things about my current position that I love. That could also be something that's important. And then the third, I think, would be what are those aspirations or goals that I have that are long-term, and how am I working towards those? And so I think those three things have to stay in play, Jen, when you start wrestling with that feeling of, I don't want to sit on my laurels. I don't want to feel complacent. I want to feel like I'm growing and moving forward. You wrote about this recently and in a post on burnout versus exhaustion. Do you mind revisiting that with listeners?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I was going to say it, but it feels a lot less obnoxious when you do. I think this is a lot of what is so confusing to people is they feel like, they get to a point where they're tired or they're doing the same thing over and over. They feel stuck. And they confuse that with burnout. Now, burnout is next level. Burnout is when you just cannot do it anymore. You're disillusioned. You are feeling negative. You're feeling like the work doesn't matter. That's a whole different thing that you've got to tackle. But if you're just tired and stuck, you can get yourself out of that. And when I work with groups, particularly groups of leaders, this is a topic they want to talk about. How do I get out of feeling stuck? And I think there's lots of ways. I'll give them a lot of practical tips that worked for me. That doesn't mean they work for other people, but things like finding a friend to have a podcast with, doing some writing, teaching as an adjunct, going back to school yourself. All of those things, I know I can almost hear our listeners groaning because it seems like a lot, but boy, there's nothing that will put an IV into your energy arm like that kind of thing. Just really forcing yourself to continue to learn and grow.
Yeah, I'll wrap up with a quick story that I know I've told in this setting before, but I have this vivid memory of in my 40s, new AP, finally, finished the degree and got the job and was moving up in the work and trying to manage a family. And I was at a church dinner, and this young man who's in his 20s was kind of rehearsing, just bought his new house, just started a new business, just had his first child. And I was celebrating. I was like, oh, doesn't it feel good to, be doing the things you've been dreaming of? Because I'm doing the things I'm dreaming of. And he was like, oh, that's so cool, Will. So like, what's the next thing you would dream about doing? And I remember like going, honestly, I'm just trying to survive, brother. I'm just trying to survive. But I walked away from that conversation going, what is that next thing I want to do? And so we're speaking to people right now that are in every stage of life, Jen, younger, older, toward retirement, just beginning, all those things. So I don't want to try to prescribe for you any quick fix for this kind of question, but I do just want to encourage you, whatever life looks like for you right now, there's still room to grow. And growth should not be just for the sake of growth either. It should be for how do I say this succinctly? It should be for you to enjoy more meaningful moments, more flourishing, more beauty, more love, more joy in the life experiences that you're having. So don't just set goals for the sake of setting goals. Set goals based on those things that matter the most to you, and then you're going to find a whole lot more joy in the work you're doing too.
Yeah, that's great.
All right,
Yeah,
friend.
more joy,
Yeah.
all the time,
So
more joy.
yeah,
Mhm.
so we'll transition now to our wonderful guest, Dr. Kip Glazer. And Principal Matters listeners, please reach out if you have questions or want additional resources. Jen, how can our listeners stay connected with you?
Yep, they can find me at jenschwanke.com, and there they can subscribe to my Principal Problems weekly newsletter.
And friends, you can find me at my website and all of today's resources at williamdparker.com. And until next time, thanks for doing what matters. Let's take a moment to thank our sponsors, and then we'll be right back. Everyone talks about the power of data driven instruction, but what does that actually look like? Look no further than iExcel, the ultimate online learning and teaching platform for K to 12. iExcel gives you meaningful insights that drive real progress, and research can prove it. Studies in nearly all 50 states across the US show that schools that use iExcel outperform other schools on state tests. Educators who use iExcel love that they can easily see how their schools are performing in real time to make better instructional decisions. And iExcel doesn't stop at just data. iExcel also brings an entire ecosystem of resources for your teachers with a complete curriculum, personalized learning plans, and so much more. It's no wonder that iExcel is used in 95 of the top 100 school districts. Ready to join them? Visit iexcel.com/PM to get started.
You're listening to Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast.
Hi, friends. This is Will Parker back with another episode of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast, where each week we bring you inspiring, innovative, and imaginative ideas for your own school leadership. And this week is Ready to Lead with AI with Dr. Kip Glazer. Dr. Kip Glazer is a former classroom teacher, district technology coach, and current high school principal of Mountain View High School in Mountain View, California. And she has more than 20 years of experience helping schools translate emerging technologies, including AI, into practical, responsible practice. She's more than just an author and a principal. Her work includes leadership decision making, understanding ethical AI, building systems that strengthen teaching and learning and student voice. And she's advised districts and collaborated with national research organizations. She's spoken nationally and internationally about what it really takes to lead AI with clarity and credibility and healthy skepticism. She's been recognized as one of DA Magazine's top 100 influential education leaders and as a CSTA Equity Fellow, Google Innovator, Engage AI Practitioner Advisory Board member. And she has a book, Ready to Lead with AI, a practical guide for school leaders, released in February 2026, that's going to offer school leaders practical guidance for navigating AI in real schools. We are recording this in advance of that, but you're going to be hearing it after its release. Kip Glazer, welcome to Principal Matters Podcast. Why don't you fill in the gaps on that intro and tell listeners something else they may be surprised to know about you?
Thank you, Will. Hi, everyone. I'm the proud principal of Mountain View High School, and people are surprised to learn that I moved from South Korea when I was 23 years old. And when I first arrived here, I did not speak English. So I had to actually learn to speak English. And they're surprised. They say that you were born here. And I say, no, I came here when I was 23 years old. And that's something that people are surprised to learn. I also wrote my dissertation on game-based learning. And so I bring that quirky lens of seeking fun because many people think principals being silly or having fun is not something that they think of, right? Like if you ask, what was your principal's name? Adults either don't remember or they'll say, oh, I was scared of that principal. So I have lots of snacks in my office and I invite people and I go out and hang out with kids and parents to let them know that principals are also people and we have funky interests and we can be friendly.
Oh my gosh, Kip, there's so much you just said in that surprise introduction that I almost want to change the entire interview, but I'm just going to keep moving forward. But I do want to say a couple of things because we've talked off the air. First of all, a quick shout out to Brent Klein, a fellow friend of ours who leads Palo Alto High School, who introduced us. And also Jimmy Casas, who I know you're working this new book with Connect Ed Publishing. So, hey, Jimmy, if you're listening in, thank you for the partnership you've done with me also and with Kip on this wonderful new book. But then I just want to come back to your origin story, because you're also a mother of very highly successful kids. Two of them, I believe, are West Point graduates, and the third is also an officer in the. I mean, you've got some really amazing legacy that you've built. What, how is that perspective of coming here, learning a new language? How has that influenced the way you lead students? Because I know you have students in your care that's probably a part of their experience too.
Yes, I think my background as a language learner, English language learner, has influenced me to look beyond what is being seen. Because I remember when I first moved to the United States, people will actually shout at me, right? And they'll ask me questions. And I think they did so with kindness. They'll shout at me and ask me questions like, "Do you speak English?" very loudly. And I felt like I'm not deaf. I just don't have the language to express what I'm thinking. And I think about our students who have so much to bring to the table with their cultural background, their family background, and just learning from their country of origin. And oftentimes, in our effort to help them be successful in this new country, we neglect to honor that and respect that. And I speak a lot about that just because you can't express what you know doesn't mean that they don't know.
Mm,
And I
yeah.
think that made me a better human, better educator, and more empathetic leader. I always try to look for something that is not visible.
Look beyond what you can see to what's not visible. And you're right. Man, that kind of curiosity really changes the way you teach and the way that you lead, um, and who you are as a person. I, man, Kip, you're so multifaceted, and ever since I've met you, I've just been intrigued with trying to figure out, like, in one interview, how to share some of the best things you've learned over time. But in this interview, we're going to focus on the new book you've done. But I know it's also going to bring in the practice that you've done, because you're experienced as a researcher, as a principal. And so, because this new book is so focused on AI and technology, I want to ask this question: what does effective leadership actually look like when the answers aren't clear yet around AI? And how should school leaders be thinking about leading well with so much uncertainty while they're trying to wait for someone to give them some clarity?
Yes, good question. You tell me. I feel like I don't know. And that's honest truth.
Mhm.
I think that because I have the title, I've actually made lots of mistakes in engaging with my staff as if I'm still their colleague or still their friends. And sometimes I have to clarify that, oh, I am speaking to you as Kip Glazer, human being, or Kip Glazer, the mother, or Kip Glazer, the educator, not as your principal. And I had to learn to really respect that my staff does respect my title and they expect me to know things. And it has been a challenging proposition because if anybody tells you, including the ones that are building AI tools, that they know what to do and how to use this tool, I have to call their bluff.
Mhm.
I don't think anyone knows. And that's the part of the challenge of being in complete iterative space while people expecting, because you are the principal, people expect you to know the answers. So that's been a very challenging road. And the book talks about that, right? Like I wrote it in the book to say, here are some stories and here are some lessons that I learned by making mistakes. And as a result of that, here are some recommendations, and hopefully that's useful. And that sounds like a cop out, but it's being honest. Like I wrote the book that I wish I had because I feel like we're all in this together and we're just figuring this out. And who's being honest and direct to say that we don't have all the answers, but here are some ways that you can interact with this thing.
There's so much wisdom in that. And you're right. In the little bit of reading that I've tried to do around large language models and the development of AI, you're right. Even AI scientists themselves cannot completely explain what they've created. And they certainly don't know what is going to happen if a superintelligence is ever developed from all of this work. And at the same time, you are leading in a school community where the technologies are unavoidable, but you're doing it with your own curiosity, trying to figure out, okay, then how can we leverage this in ways that can enhance student learning, but your own humility, which is admitting that I don't know what I don't know, and neither do you. So how can we learn this together? And so I love it that you are inviting your teachers into that curiosity and humility with you. But I'm also curious what that looks like in practice. One of the things that your book points out, and by the way, I've only gotten a sneak peek into your book because we're recording this right before it gets released to the public. But I'm just curious, what's an area where you see a major gap between what research is saying about AI and learning and what's actually happening in schools? And what are some ways that principals can think about how to work within that tension in their own schools?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I've been thinking a lot about it. I think that we have to get better at thinking about fundamental pedagogy.
Hmm.
And I also think about the identity disruption. I think prior to AI, even Gen AI specifically, but prior to AI and even the search engine era, I think teachers were the people who are not only the most educated, but also most knowledgeable person in the room. And I think many teachers and educators in general take that responsibility very seriously, right? You went to college, you know stuff, and that's why you're standing in front of a group of young people and say, hey, I can lead the way. And I think AI, Gen AI have disrupted that. And there is an emotional toll, just as my admission as a principal that I don't have all the answers. And it is hard pill to swallow sometimes when I'm in front of my staff and having to admit that. And there is an emotional reaction, right? Staff's like, what? You're the principal. You are supposed to tell me. And I'm pretty sure teachers feel that way as well. Students are looking at them and saying, you are the teacher. You are supposed to know this, and you're telling me that you don't know, or they catch you, right? Like the young people,
Mm-hmm.
when they introduce new tools, and when a teacher says, oh, I haven't seen it, or I didn't know about this, that creates the sense of insecurity. And how do we manage that and turn that into an opportunity to stay curious with the students? And I think that's why we have to double down on the collaboration and communication being the center of all our activities in the classroom. And I think teachers have a hard time releasing that control to follow where the students are going, which is why I created the tech internship program to sort of model that. How do you, as a leader, hold your place of authority, if you will, while allowing your students to lead the way?
Mm-hmm.
So,
there's so much wisdom in what you said. I want to pause because you said two things. One is we have to get better about understanding the importance of our pedagogy. And then two, we have to get better at responding to the disruptions that will push us towards insecurity, but instead should invite us towards more collaboration. Come back to that first piece, Kip, on um, why returning to good pedagogy is an important part of that process for you.
yes, I think the assessment that we have developed with all good intention, focuses mostly on knowing how much students know, the content. And it's not as good at assessing how do they use the content to create something. And I think AI can definitely offer that opportunity. That's why a lot of AI enthusiasts talk about personalized learning and differentiate learning as the benefit potentially of AI. And to me, student creation is where it's at, right? If we're going to transform education, how do we put the tools in their hands so that they can actually create something to solve big problems? And traditional school system is not well designed for that. And knowing that and being able to facilitate that is where good pedagogy comes into play. And honestly, when you walk into a classroom with high level of collaboration, the teacher in the room is always coaching, always looking, right? And it is not as easy as people think. I've done it. And during my dissertation process, I've leveraged role playing game creation to improve literacy and numeracy. And I remember an assistant principal walking into my classroom. It was an AP English literature classroom, and he was just floored. He's like, "What are you doing? Kids are drawing, kids are writing, kids are playing games. How is this an AP Lit class?" And I had to say, I am doing what's best for my students in terms of solid learning technologies, learning science principles, and we will be okay. And we ended up having my students passing that AP Lit test. And that's what I mean. Like, it requires a lot of thinking, a lot of planning, and a lot of skills to release that control, if you will. And I wish we have more time to do that.
Kip, the longer I know you, the more and more my respect for you just keeps growing. And so the fact that not only do you have a background in helping schools understand better uses of technology, um, but I mean, there's a lot of hard classes. AP Lit is one of the hardest to be able to step in and help kids prepare for those exams, but to do that in a way that is putting yourself as the teacher to coach and facilitate them towards those ends. And that same mindset is what you're trying to use school-wide for introducing all these changes that are happening that are disruptive, but are also going to be meaningful, to use your words, to move students from just an understanding or a knowledge to creating an implementation. And you've just presented on this recently with your students at the time of this recording. And so I'm so curious to learn more about the implementation of your principal's tech internship. Can you explain its origins and how it's transformed support across Mountain View High School?
Yes, I always had this idea that the less I have to direct young people, gradual release, the better. Because when I walk into a classroom and if teachers doing all the work and kids are just sitting there, then I considered that to be an instructional failure. So if I'm going to ask my teachers to do that, I have to model that. So I've built a couple different programs or coached a couple different student groups, but I always had this notion that we have talented students on our campus, yet they're seeking internship program elsewhere. And with our two boys, I used to say to them as their mother, charity begins at home. You got to take care of your people first, except that structure dictates behaviors and accumulation of those behaviors create culture. So if you want to see that culture of charity beginning at home, you have to create structure to invite that behavior. So I always had this idea that when I'm a principal, I want to create this program where I'm going to invite talented students who want to help their community in terms of technology and help them thrive on campus. And I try to always make it like a win-win-win, right? So, okay, how am I going to invite our technology well-versed students into want to do this? They're still high school students and they want to get internship credit. And if I could get them to receive college credit, that would be a win-win for everybody, right? I'm going to get some student helpers and students will get college credit and internship credit. So how do I do this? And I was so lucky that my district allowed me to partner with our community college where they were asking me to be the boss, right? Like, so I'm the supervisor and our students are able to work with the college professors to get their community college credit. So we started small, just getting a form out to the staff members and say, hey, if you need any help from our kids, just complete this form. Primarily when they get a new student in the classroom, right? Teachers don't have time to onboard these students that are arriving throughout the year. So our students started to do that. And things changed in when like I started 2 years ago, so it's 2024. In November of 2024, I happened to have a visitor, Tiffany Taylor, now president of ASU GSV Summit, and I met her at a event and she spoke so eloquently about youth agency. So I walked up to her. I didn't even know who she was. I was like, "You're so impressive. I'm a high school principal in Mountain View. If you ever in our area, please come visit my school." And she actually reached out and she said, "Hey, I'm going to be at Stanford and I would love to come and visit your school." So I turned to my students and said, this is your chance, right? Like she works with a lot of venture capitalists. This will be a great opportunity for you to pitch to her and impress her and see how she takes it. And they did. They came up with this like how we're going to grow tech internship program. And Tiffany Taylor challenged them to say, you're thinking too small. You're helping school, but you also need to help the community. So think about a way to do that. And I think that really sparked their interest. So then they wanted to go do these community events. So literally, I started just following them. They said, could we host an AI expert panel? I said, sure. Who do you want to invite? And they would name, and I'd be like, okay. And then I would tell them, okay, how are you going to approach these people? And they'll ask me, like, here's the email. And then like it just snowballed from there. And last April, 3 of my students got to present at ASU GSV. So we're still figuring it out. We keep growing, and we just came back from FETC, where 6 of my students did 2 separate presentations of the projects that we worked on, and hopefully we will do more of that.
Wow. So from those conversations and some input from someone who was able to listen to those students pitch an idea, you guys came up with a program that, and I'm basing this also because I've looked at some of the slides from that presentation you do with your students. So help me out, Kip, if I don't get it right. But you've created a system of students who can provide on-campus tech support, technical projects that they can do within the school, but also ways that the community can be engaged with the community who also may want or need help with some of the things that they're trying to do with technology. Tell us a little bit more about that journey. What are some things, some takeaways that students have experienced, and what were some lessons you learned through that experience with them?
Yeah, so I have little sayings over the years. My own kids, they're like, "Oh, mom," and they roll their eyes. But I actually believe that we need to give them more opportunities to productively fail
Mm.
while they're at school. So having these challenges of putting together an event, right? And I try to be as hands off as I can. How are you going to do the show, run of the show? How are you going to create a flyer? How are you going to do the promotion? Who are you going to talk to? All these little components of creating successful experience. I usually ask a lot of questions, and our students are brilliant. And sometimes they overestimate how much they can get done, underestimate how long it's going to take. And I always try to tell them whatever you view as failure sometimes has more values. Your kids, people are going to be way more forgiving if you quote unquote fail now. So do it now. So I feel like that has been the best lesson for them. And we have learned a lot actually as we are trying to expand opportunities. We learned that having face to face time with a small group of people regularly is actually more beneficial and more impactful than trying to do everything online, and all these lessons, real life lessons they're learning, and they tell me they're learning, so hopefully I'm doing right by them.
Oh, I love that. And what's so cool, Kip, is that you're also designing opportunities for them to get a sense of what real life work feels like before they're ever out of school, but then walking them through those processes in a place that's safe, where you can take risks, but with your guidance of helping them imagine, like you said, an event where they're running everything from the beginning to the end and developing all the work that goes with that. And then the lessons they learn in that process too, which I thought that was such an interesting takeaway, which is even with all the processes and all the technology, um, they've realized, oh, we actually need to talk. We also need that face to face interaction to regroup, to rethink, which is kind of how I think we adults have figured that out too when it comes to all the technologies we use in our work, which is, man, a quick walk down the hallway could save me a lot of time and trouble rather than a 30-minute agonizing over this email that I want to send. Um, what about for you as you think about those lessons that you've walked through with your own students in collaboration? Any other surprises or takeaways for you as leading them through those efforts?
Yeah, I'm always surprised how much my staff actually want my time, right? I think grown-ups still want their superiors or managers or boss to let them, right? Like, and I'm trying to do a better job. And I'm a very direct communicator, and I'm oftentimes about the work and the business, and I'm really working on caring for the people. And I grew up in a household in South Korea where if your parents are not disciplining you, everything's good, right? And it was so fascinating. I have two American children because I had them here. And I remember my older one telling me, Mom, it would be nice if you tell me good job, right? And I'm like, what? Or like, and my younger one was like, yeah, you never say good job, I'm proud of you. And I'm like, that is not true. I do say that. And my younger one said, and I think they were like first and third graders. And my younger one says, no, you have to get straight A's or A plus, and you barely say good job. But when I got 100% on my spelling quiz, that was a good job, right? And just such a parenting lesson. Just because I don't need it or I didn't get it doesn't mean that my people don't need it or they shouldn't get it. And I'm really, really trying hard to be able to share that. So that's something that I'm working on. I am not perfect principal. I'm not a perfect leader. And if any of my teachers are hearing it, I see you. I care about you. Just don't have sometimes time in a given day.
Well, let's sit there for just a moment because I wanted to have this conversation with you too, because besides all the amazing things you're doing with collaborating with teachers around technology, inviting students to be interns in your school around technology development. You also have all of the same day-to-day stresses and long hours and added complexities to this work that every leader that I talk to has. And um, so Kip, none of us does this perfectly, but I'd love you to speak to leaders about how do you protect your own values and clarity and your own person while still trying to do this work innovatively. What works for you?
Yeah, I try to invite honesty and be humble in listening to the criticism or constructive feedback. And that is a constant struggle because no one likes to be told that you are not doing the best job, right? And I'm really trying to hear the intention behind it. And I just assume positive intent that if they are honest and forthright enough to tell me something is not working, I would rather have that than people suffering in silence. So I keep trying to encourage my staff, like, I can't fix something, whether it's about myself or about the things that I'm doing, until I know about it. So please don't ever feel that you couldn't tell me. And if I have strong reaction or a negative reaction, it's not really you, it's my insecurities or my own um, guilt of not being the perfect leader. And I'll always fix it. So please, and I try to be very explicit about that. And I think there's still that stigma of not wanting to tell the principal how she's not doing a good job. And I'd rather hear it directly from that person than like as a water cooler conversation. And I think we need more of that. Just going up to the person and saying, this doesn't work for me. And here's what I need. And I think if we all did that, which I try to do, world will be a better place. Honest.
Three things, Kip, that you said there that I thought were so powerful. One is, four, inviting that honest feedback and then being open to it, even if it hurts. Two, assuming the best intention you can on the part of others, even though sometimes people don't come to you with the best intentions, but let's assume that. Three, choosing feedback over people suffering in silence, because if you work in a place where there's not that openness to I need help or this is not working, then bad things are going to happen. But then the last part is your your commitment to being explicit about your own intentions. Like, we may not do this perfectly, but let me be explicit with you that I want your feedback and I want to do this together. I probably mentioned this book a lot in the last years to anybody who listens to my podcast, but I just can't get past it. But David Yeager has a book called 10 to 25, The Science of Motivating Young People. And he also has a chapter in there on principals and teachers and employers and managers and employees. And he's a former middle school educator who's now a psychology professor. And the reason I bring this book up all the time is because it's the first book I've seen that does quantitative, not just qualitative, evidence on what happens when leaders are very explicit like you are. It immediately erases teachers, it lowers stress. It might invite more feedback, but it actually lowers their own stress to realize that openness exists rather than having to guess constantly. Anything you want to add to that before I move forward? Because there's some questions I want to ask you as we wrap up.
Yeah, and I think I have to constantly remember that that power dynamic, right? Power differential, if you will. I am their principal, so I have to constantly say, I'm not speaking to you as a principal. I'm not trying to get you in trouble. This is really about Kip Glazer, educator, talking to you as an educator, and we are all in this together. Educating young people, it's a big job. It's a complex job. And we can't really waste our time worrying about tiptoeing around other people's feelings. If you just have to say something, just do it. And please know that I respect you and I may not like everything that you do, but I am happy to agree to disagree respectfully. So it takes some time. People are not used to my directness, and I have been told that you're sometimes too direct, too honest, and it's very intimidating. And I'm like, well, I don't know how to be any other way. So hopefully you will get used to it. And the more time I spend with my staff, hopefully they will get used to it.
You have had such a tremendous career of, 20 years of working with schools, advising people that want to work with schools, exposure and participation in a lot of innovation and technology conversations. And now here's this new book. And so as we wrap up, I do want to give you an opportunity to tell listeners anything else that you learned through the writing of this book that you would want them to hold on to. But I also know, Kip, you're already thinking about the next book. You already, so any other, let's wrap up with two things. One, any other lessons you would like them to find in this new book? And then second, any parting words of advice that you would want listeners to hold on to in their own leadership?
Yes, I think leadership really is everything. In order for any organization to succeed, you have to have humble and hardworking leaders. So all the organizations, all the schools out there who are doing really well, kudos to the principals. And the lesson that I wanted my fellow school leaders to take away from my book was that we all have unique but similar stories. We're all in it together, and the flavor or details might be different. But I think if you keep thinking, like, how do I make sure whatever I'm doing is the best for my students who are ultimately our product, our customer, our client, whatever the words you want to put it. And I think we will be much better together. And I'm not an expert by any means, but if I have anything to share to help you make your life easier, please reach out. Like I said, we're all in this together.
Well, the book is Ready to Lead with AI, a practical guide for school leaders. And if you're looking for a resource that will just help you stay centered in navigating all these new technologies, but centered from the perspective of someone else just like you that's doing it, then reach out today. You can find it on Amazon, or you can go to connected.org and find that book there. Kip, thank you so much for the opportunity. I will put also a link to your website, because you can be found at kipglazer.com. And I know that if listeners want to connect with you, they can find you there. Thank you for the opportunity to learn from you. Any other parting words of advice you want to say before we say goodbye?
Well, thank you for speaking with me, Will. And I really appreciate your kindness. And I think there are lots of kind people in the world who would be happy to help you. So, like I said, stay in touch.
All right, my friend. Well, Principal Matters listeners, thank you for doing what matters, and we'll talk to you again next week. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, would you take a moment and like, share, subscribe, or leave us a review? In fact, if you share it out with a friend, even more people can become a part of these conversations. Sign up for our newsletter at williamdparker.com for even more free resources. And don't forget to check out our website to learn more about our books, professional development offerings, Grow Academies, masterminds, executive coaching, and keynote presentations. Wow, let's keep learning together. And thank you for doing what matters.
Principal Matters.